Hi and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're having a lovely December. If you're going to be celebrating Christmas this weekend, have a very merry with your friends and family. If you celebrated Hanukkah, I hope you had a lovely time with them. This video is going to show you how to make stone walls for, well, basically cottages or anything you want to use it for. This is one of those techniques that was pretty much the most requested one from my Facebook group, so I want to make sure I got that done before I went into holiday mode and took a little break. So do keep in mind my next video probably won't be until January. That being said, take a look. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to ask me down below and I'll do my best to answer your questions for you. Anything else, you can always try and find me on the Facebook group. There is now a little clicky link that you can see on the main page of my channel. It'll take you right there. You can also find me on Instagram, or you can email me at thecraftingmuse.email@gmail.com. One thing to keep in mind is that you are going to want to make sure you have a low temp hot glue gun for this particular project. Anything else will not work because it's going to eat through the foam from the heat, or it's just going to mush into itself. So low temp hot glue gun, you do need it. Again, I hope you have a lovely weekend. I hope it's restful, and I will see you later. Take care. Bye. Where we live, there are actually a lot of homes that were built in the 1700s, and the settlers who came here used the stones that are naturally in the ground. And it's these stone buildings that gave me inspiration for the walls of the cottage, because they all had these different hues and shapes and colors, and that's what I wanted to incorporate into my cottage exterior walls. So I had this little shed-like cottage that's actually on a road that we drive by all the time when I'm dropping the kids off to school, and this is what the stonework looks on that cottage shed. And obviously the top's been redone, but the base is original to whatever building had been there once upon a time, and you see so many homes that have either foundations that look like this or full walls that are even built like this. So this is what my point of inspiration was for the cottage walls in this case. So what I'm going to do is take you through step by step how to recreate this look. To get started to create this, you're first going to want to get some foam from Dollar Tree, and then you just take a ballpoint pen and you start drawing in your stones. What I do is I start in the upper corner and work down the side wall, just putting in some stonework detail. And what I do is a smaller stone and then an elongated stone and move back to a smaller stone just to create this corner pattern. You don't have to do this part, but I did want to show it because it does give a neat look in the end when you have the building fully assembled. The other thing I did was draw in where windows could go. However, I'm not building windows in this video. I wanted you to see the fresco wall detail and the stone details. So in this case, these are just a suggestion, and you can see how you work around them by drawing the stones underneath where I've drawn in just the fake windows. Those are going to disappear in a little bit. But basically just go through and you're going to draw in your pattern. It doesn't need to be deep. It doesn't need to be extremely detailed outside of, I do recommend making sure you make the stones different shapes and sizes. Again, this isn't something where we're going to go back and use that ballpoint pen to deepen the texture. You're actually going to do something entirely different. So right now you are literally just drawing onto the foam itself. And what I do is work from one side over to the other, and then make sure when you get towards the other side, you do that corner pattern if you're deciding to do that again, and then finish drawing in the rest of the stones once that corner pattern is back into your wall. When it comes to the fresco wall details, what you're going to do is use a wire brush, and I have this particular style and I use the smaller part of it, and you're going to do these sweeping motions across the foam to give it texture. You can also take that brush and sort of dab it on top, but it's the sweeping motions that'll give it that fresco wall detail without having to work with other things like plaster or that type of look. So you want to take the brush and just gently go over it, making sure you get your grooves, and you should end up with something that looks like this. Here's where we're going to put that low temp glue gun to use. What you want to do is start in the upper corner, again if you've done that corner detail, and you're going to alternate every other stone. And what you do is you put a daub on top of each area where you've drawn in a stone with the hot glue. It helps to sort of give it a little swirl and just quickly pick it up so that you're not bringing a huge trail behind you of the hot glue. But as you go along, you go every other, and you're going to let the glue cool and set as you're working on these stones. So work your way down the side of the wall, and then you're going to work your way through the wall, again making sure that no daub of glue that you're using right now is going to touch another, because what you want to have happen is have these bits of glue completely dry before you go back over and add in another stone. Essentially, it's the glue that's going to create this great stone look to the wall, but you need to make sure you have a pattern where no new piece of glue is going to be pressing up against another piece of new glue. Otherwise, they will mesh together and just give you a general blob as opposed to the defined stones. So it does help to keep that glue gun close. Do a little swirl, lift it up. If you have any threads, you can always just take your finger and just sort of quickly pull them away once you know the top's cooled off a little bit. If you pull too soon, it will create pointy looks to your stones as opposed to rounded off. The heat from the glue will help it round off naturally. That's why you want to give these time in between each round. The one thing I am going to make a point of doing with this is I'm going to use alternating colors of hot glue so you can see how it builds up on top of each other as you go through this process of every other stone and working around the wall area where you've drawn in your stone pattern. I'm going to start by saying it is not necessary to use different colors of hot glue. I again am doing this just so it's easier to see in video what you do here. When you know your first round of hot glue is completely cooled, you'll go back in with your hot glue gun and do the same thing, making a point to alternate stones, leaving space in between the new ones so that you're not putting new glue against new glue. And as you can see here with the red-based glitter hot glue, you can see how this pattern starts to build up on itself to make it easier to create the stones and not worry that you have two pieces together so they don't turn into a big blob on you. You will find as you work from one side of the wall to the other, usually by the time you're ready to go back to the original starting side, everything has cooled enough so you can go back in and start adding more stones. But as you can see in these clips, here are a couple more rounds of where I've added more stones. We have the green stones that came in, and then finally rounding it off with the gold colored glue for the stones. The importance again is making sure you alternate. You do not put new glue against new glue, and you have some patience with this. This is definitely a time-consuming technique, but in the long run it is very much worth the end results and how it will look. Once everything's cooled, you can go back in, start pulling off all those extra threads. If you have something that's sort of hiccuped and not looking quite right, you can take the tip of your hot glue gun and sort of smooth and round it off a little bit more should you choose to. Here's the end result, and as you can see, it has some really great texture and depth to it, which is the overall look I wanted to achieve using this particular technique. For the base coat, what you're going to do is mix equal parts Mod Podge Matte with Apple Barrel's Chocolate Bar and Apple Barrel's Pavement. These two colors do a great job blending together to give a nice dark tone to your base coat without blacking everything out altogether. When your base coat is completely dry, what you're going to do is take a flat head stencil brush, and with Apple Barrel's Nutmeg, you're going to brush that across the stonework as well as the wall area to get everything this lighter brown tone. So you want to make sure it gets a good covering, but it is not a thick coat. You want this to be about an 80% coverage on here. It's not completely covering your original base coat. Once the nutmeg has dried, you're going to go back in, and this time using a stippling technique with the same stencil brush, you're going to stipple in first this color of English Navy and then let it dry just a little bit. You're going to make this sort of a sporadic pattern. Once that's dried just a little bit, you don't want to be completely dry, you can go back in with this burgundy red and do the same thing, stipple it onto the stones, making sure it's variegated and you have it in different areas. You don't want complete coverage, you want just slight hints of these colors in each of the zones. When those darker colors have dried completely, you're then going to go back in with the medium brown and stipple in some more of that color. And in this case, you do a little bit more coverage than you have with the others. When you're done doing the coverage for that color, you move on to this Golden Sunset. And again, same thing, a little bit more coverage than you would have done with the darker colors. And then allow these two colors to dry completely. When your mid-tone colors are completely dry, you're now going to move on to doing the same technique of stippling around, covering more of the area with the classic gray from Craftsmart, and then you'll move on to using suede from Craftsmart as well, doing the same thing, so you end up with your stones looking more of these lighter colors than the darker colors to begin with. The next and final thing you're going to do with these stones is go back and going back to all of those original colors that you were using before, from the blue up and through the gold tone, you're going to just randomly put in stones that are more true to those colors than leaving everything more of this gray and suede tone. I find this gives you the variegated look to the stones as well as the variation in colors that I find in the stonework in my area. Moving on to the fresco wall area, which you're first going to start with color-wise, and this you're just using a classic paintbrush. You're going to paint on that Golden Sunset yellow over everything as much as you possibly can. Give it about a 90% coverage in this case. As you can see, there is some of the details showing through from the darker brown base coat. You do want to see that, so don't cover that up completely, but you want to have something that looks like what you see here as pictured. While the paint is still somewhat wet, you are going to move on to this butter yellow color, and you're going to blend that into the original darker yellow. You do want these colors to mix just a little bit, and then you want to have the lighter yellow show through a little bit more in other areas. This is what's going to give that variation of the tonal colors you'll find in a classic fresco wall as well. When you get that mid-tone yellow done, you're going to move on to the next color, which is vanilla ice cream, and you're going to do the same technique again, so you're blending the colors more together, and it gives you this mix and variation of these colors when they're blended one after the next. Allow this to dry completely before we move on to doing the washes. For your washes, you're going to have two separate colors. For the fresco area, you're going to go back to your medium brown that you've used before, turn that into a wash, and put that over the fresco wall area once everything is completely dry. For your stonework, you're going to go back to that jet black color, and you're going to give that a wash with the jet black. I find it helps to do the jet black first, and make sure you have the piece on a vertical so as the black doesn't leak into the fresco area. Once that's dry, you can then go into your medium brown and do the fresco area just to prevent any bleeding going through. And it gives it completely different looks for the two, but they're definitely worth doing and making sure you get those two different color washes onto your piece. Once everything is dry, your piece is then ready and set to go. So this is how I went about making this particular look of the fresco walls as well as the rounded off stonework. I hope it's something you can put to use in your future projects. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that like button and hit that notification bell in case you want to get notifications when the next video comes up. Have a great day, and I'll see you later.
After that, I don't know. Oh, I hate this. Can I just pretend I filmed and just jump right into it? That would work, right? Please? You know when the kids are up to something and it suddenly gets quiet? That's me right now. They went from bickering to pretty much nothing. And it's been 3 days straight of pew, 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 and so yeah, we might have to have a check and see moment. Great. There's also the Facebook group page now if you want to go and find that. No, not with the cats. Cats and kids. I'm telling you, cats and kids. That's not gonna work. Oops.